There you go. Now you can hear. You can put up the screen, Ed. He says. The screen?
You know.
Das.
I
saw that.
Are we Olivia-less?
No,
Olivia
she is saying her goodbyes.
Oh, I see. That could take a half a century. Yeah, last week when Diane and I left, they were still saying goodbyes when we walked out to the car.
Mm-hmm.
And we left 15 minutes after, so.
Well, that's how courtship works.
I'm telling you, man.
Cheerings.
Took me back to our courting days. Yeah.
Blech.
Oh, like it was different then, huh, Kathleen? Yeah, right. Just.
I'll tell you what. This whole dating a boy thing is like, it's teaching me some things. Because my bitter, cynical heart is.
Her cynical heart.
Because he's like, okay, and I'm like, all right, bye, see you tomorrow.
Oh man. But.
Huh? What happened?
Her cynical heart will tell on you.
Yep.
Let's see, where was I? I've got to.
Oh boy. All right.
Yeah.
I just can't keep my glasses clean. I just can't.
That's why I wear the contacts.
Apparently my eye is too pointy. I can't wear contacts in one of my eyes.
Really?
Man.
No.
I started wearing
I presume that will come back to bite me later.
gas permeable, like the hard contacts.
Mm-hmm.
That's like that's a torture device.
You're being trolled by seminarian James Vu.
James Vu. What?
Just telling you now.
No, sir. I don't even know what you said. I haven't even gotten there yet, but I'm just going to go ahead and say, worry about yourself. Oh, James Vu. So funny. Get out of here. That's what I told my sixth graders. They tell on each other like they're in kindergarten.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's 2 rules in my classroom and 2 rules in my life. Move with a purpose, be aware of your surroundings. I've had to add a 3rd rule to life. Worry about yourself. Oh my gosh.
Oh, really?
So-and-so isn't writing with a blue or black ink pen. Die? Are you personally going to die because they're not writing with a blue or black ink pen? No. Then why are you up here in my business? Worry about yourself.
Kathleen Lee, educator.
You know, Hank Williams had a song about that. If you mind your own business, you won't be minding mine.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and there you go.
Yeah. Good old Hank.
Yes, but I do tell you this: these little junior high children have softened me.
Yeah.
It's true. It may not seem like it.
Like to a gas permeable.
Yes, to a gas permeable contact. Sticking a rigid piece of plastic in your eyeball just so you can see. That's technology.
And that's Kathleen's teaching style.
My doctor was like, yeah, you can't have soft contacts because it's going to worsen your eyesight. And I'm like, or I can like rip my cornea because this thing is a hard, rigid piece of plastic.
But is there benefit to it? Like, do you have to remove them the same way and everything?
No, I don't even remember how, you have to, instead, you can't, so with soft contacts, you can stick your finger in your eye, right?
Yeah.
And these you have to, manipulate your eye
Oh.
so that, you pop them out.
Oh, no, thank you.
Oh, really?
They're way more expensive.
No, that scares me. Anything having to do with my eye,
Yeah.
which has the consistency of a peeled grape. I don't.
Every time I go in and they make you stick your chin in that thing and they blow a puff of air in your... it's not the air. It's the fact that they get that thing so close to your eyeball, and then they're like, okay, yeah. And then every time they move it, it's like click. I'm like, okay, sorry, I thought that was it. Okay, let's see. What conversation? Well, Sure wish I had a snack or something.
The backstory, folks, is that Kathleen did not get a king cake from Olivia today.
That's okay though. Hey. Oh, that's hey. You know.
This week before she can't receive mail anymore.
That's fine. Hey.
They buried the Alleluia. And they can't receive mail.
Don't worry about it. It's fine. I'll just waste away over here.
First world problem, says PJ in the chat room. That's true. It's true. It's true.
That's true. I'm sorry. I'm getting all my complaining out before Lent.
Are you giving that up for Lent? No. I didn't make coffee today because I was setting up Jeff's situation.
I don't know why this is not letting me. Every time I want to share, it says start a watch party. I don't want to start a watch party.
Oh, I need to share, I guess.
Listen, Olivia, don't come in here with your.
I asked her the nicest way possible.
All your demands.
Like a little demure mouse.
All of your demands. Hey, Danny, how you doing?
Okay, so I'm just gonna. I don't know how to not start a watch fire. I don't want to do that. Listen, Facebook, I done had enough.
Oh, what?
Oh, shit, I'm mine. Oh, okay. There we go. I guess that's all right.
Yeah,
But I don't want to watch party. God dog it. I could start an French Bulldog enthusiast.
Maybe click the little like 3 dots next to see where it says Kathy going live, following the little bell, and then the 3 dots.
I don't.
X out of this
Okay.
thing,
Okay.
Life is difficult.
and then go
I won't lie.
on the left.
This
There's the
is,
little 3 dots.
dear me. Yeah, I can't seem to say share it either.
I'm starting a watch party.
Share, go share.
I did that. Watch party. I don't want a stinking watch party. I just want to share the live. Okay, guess what? I'm throwing a party, people. There will be no snacks, apparently, because Olivia didn't bring any, but...
Oh yes, and Olivia is the only one capable of bringing snacks.
Oh,
Well-
my goodness. I'll just stay on this side. I'll be over here, everybody.
Sorry, okay.
I don't actually know how to share this without
Danny started a watch party
a party.
in the
but
chat room.
Come on in.
There are no snacks.
That's exactly what I'm putting. Come on in. There are no snacks. But
Oh wait, I can just share it from.
guaranteed. I don't even know how you spell guaranteed. To be a good time. Never spell it right. Okay, so I'm very excited about this weekend because I'm singing for Lake Charles DYC
Yep.
in Beaumont. But I found out about 47 minutes past where we're going to be is Buc-ee's. You, sir. You, Ed Ball, for the win. Ed Ball delivers with the snacks, baby. Olivia? Oh, that's right. You can't have any.
I lost one.
Lost a... Oh.
Ed, did you free like $4 in change to her snacks? You won't tell? Okay.
You have a secret stash.
James Vu, you can come on the show. Come on the show.
What he says?
He says he'll bring all the snacks, especially the cheese fountain that Kathleen
Yes.
had her eye on. I don't believe you, James Vu. I know what seminarians make. Zero.
Yeah, don't lie to me, sir.
You can't even rent a cheese fountain on seminarian monies. I'm just saying. I mean, not that I'm trying to diss the fact that you have given your life to the Lord in this liminal phase, but
However, I do accept chicken nuggets, king cake, and various other snacks.
a full list can be found at kathleenlee.org.com.
Kathleen's writer, apparently.
.co.uk /kathleensfood.html.
I was putting kids on the bus the other day. This little kid turned around. He must have been in 3rd or 4th grade. He goes, Like it just turns around at
stop.
the bus steps
Yeah.
and like stares me in the eyes and goes, I have a website. And I was like, excuse me?
And you are a little creeper.
And I was like Facebook? Because all the kids are like finding me on Facebook and stuff. And he was like, no, like a reallife.com website. And I was like,
Areallive.com.
it's .org, but okay.
All
All right, we're starting this watch party. Woo! Get excited.
I bet if you put for public, it won't be a watch party.
Well, I don't know how to do
Oh,
that
look,
now.
Kathleen Lee started a watch party.
I know, but I don't know how to share it. It's the only way. Tune on in, people.
4 minutes.
That's fantastic.
Olivia, a peace offering. Nope, too slow.
I don't know what's going to happen
I'm just
today.
kidding, I'm kidding.
I really don't.
Thank you for
be.
sharing your bounty.
You're welcome. I just watched the Thanksgiving episode of Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman where I didn't have any food and everybody came into this town and shared what they had.
I've got an M&M shell that's stuck.
Oh,
In the, hi,
The gift
everybody.
that keeps on giving.
There we go. Okay.
It'll dissolve.
Gosh, those are sharp when they're detached from the chocolate.
Little candy coating.
Yeah. It didn't melt in my mouth. That was the problem.
well now I can't see any of the other.
You can't see any of the chat.
No. This is the. I'm just drooling on myself. What is happening? There's Coke in the refrigerator, which never happens.
Ooh.
M&M's, which
Thinking of you.
I think they came out of heaven. I can't share this thing to anything other than a watch party. I don't know who's watching with me. I don't know.
Well,
And then I'm drooling on myself.
It's a long road ahead.
This is going to be a show right here.
All right. A couple minutes to go here.
I've lost all.
I'll just pre-apologize for Kathleen.
What? And I'll say, you're welcome. Look, I'm back. I don't know where my watch show went, but now I'm back to the original.
2 minutes.
Oh my gosh. Watch together with a group. I already did that. Let's see what's on my
Okay.
Oh, here it is.
All right, shall I pray?
Better.
Can I break for prayer? Anything else, Kathleen? Good.
No.
Oh, I didn't write my T's. I better hurry because I've got to write my T's. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Almighty God, we thank you for this opportunity to broadcast the gospel over the medium of the internet, over radio, over television. We ask that you would send your Spirit to be with us, that you will say things that will help those on the way to salvation, protect all of our equipment from the deadly attack of the enemy, and keep our hearts always tuned to your sacred heart. We make this prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen. St. Joseph, pray for us. Today, by the way. Yep.
Thank you.
Start the consecration to St. Joseph.
Yeah.
We'll be with you in about a minute, so stay right where you are. Food and faith at Chef John Pulse's White Oak Estate and Gardens in Baton Rouge on Wednesday, March 18th at 6 p.m. A steak dinner, red wine, and fine Regina cigars. In this unique tax-deductible fundraiser for Catholic Community Radio, you'll have a great time of sharing your common bond with Christ in a casual atmosphere. Plus, there will be raffle items and surprise guests. Reservations are $100 online at ccradio.live. A steak dinner, red wine, and fine Regina cigars. Catholic Man Night, Wednesday, March 18th at 6 p.m. at White Oak Estate on George O'Neill Road. Visit ccradio.live and buy your reservation now.
The way,
Our catechism,
the truth,
Holy Scripture,
the life.
Catholic tradition.
Now, more than ever.
WPYR 1380 AM Baton Rouge and WPYR LP 105.9 FM Baton Rouge.
Today on the show, a brother who bakes getting ready for Lent. Why is everything so messed up all the time? Our Pigs of the Week and so much more. The Catholic Underground starts right now.
What?
It's time for the Catholic Underground, where the podcast that tries to cut through the noise of the digital continent and bring you the topics that matter. It's episode number 416, I believe. I'm Father Chris Decker. Joining me this week, we've got Kathleen Lee, the teacher as Maximus at Our Lady of Mercy School in Baton Rouge. Hey, Kathleen.
Hey, good to be here.
When I said, why is everything all messed up? She goes, I know, right? I know the international facial symbol for I know, right? From Kathleen. Also, we head over to Olivia Galino. She is our student of life, our resident Italian food critic. She joins us, here.
I am here.
We're glad that you're here. Thanks, Olivia. And it's not the end of the show. I'm not thanking you yet. We're pre-thanking
So I guess
you.
I'll just leave. Thank you. It's been wonderful to be with you.
Going up to the satellite there, to the Jeff Star 1 near-Earth orbit satellite, and to Jeff Blackwell, our technical director. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Father. I see I've been into the sticky toffee pudding again.
Indeed.
Makes a little wacky.
I think there was a rum sauce
Yeah.
also.
I do enjoy a good rum sauce, minus the sauce.
There we go. And and Ed, who has provided chocolatey candies for Kathleen,
Gracias.
so that she will smile all the way through the show. So, yeah, it's good. Alrighty, so I enjoy. I don't know about y'all. Probably Olivia for sure. Kathleen maybe. Did you enjoy the Great British Baking thing?
Does it have to do with food? Then yes, I did thoroughly enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there was an American offshoot of the Great British Baking Show called the Great American Baking Show, and an unlikely candidate was on that show. Capuchin brother Andrew Corienti says, "I've been called to be a priest and to bake."
Excellent.
That's right. So yeah, during a January 2020 morning show on Fox 5, which is the Washington, D.C. affiliate, there was an interview with a young baker from Catholic University of America. He was a student at Catholic U. He wanted to talk about his participation in the 5th season of the Great American Baking Show that happened in December, so it was their holiday season. And Brother Andrew said that it was for amateur bakers from all over the country, especially for self-taught bakers.
Yeah.
So Olivia who has not gone to a baking school that I know of anyway.
I have not.
Well, you and Brother Andrew have this in common. He says several
really
of us
wanna do
competed.
this.
Yeah, I bet Olivia would be cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
so can you imagine? He described it. He said it was a month-long competition, and you had to bake 24 items all together. And if you are familiar with the Great British Baking Show, the American Baking Show followed the same kind of thing. He said there were themes for each of the different items, and then there was a format. So the first week was cake. Kathleen.
Always
I
start
like
with
it this week.
That's right. And so all the contestants prepared a simple cake that they would prepare at home. So Brother Andrew, who cooks for 30 friars or so, 30 Capuchin friars, I should say, he cooked a cake. So there was a technical challenge to see if the contestants understood baking techniques. And then the third session was for contestants to bake a huge, elaborate centerpiece. I believe they called it a showstopper.
They do indeed.
Yeah.
It is the showstopper.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's what what he did. So the judge would judge you on each challenge, adding that his winning entry was choux buns, and I do love a choux pastry.
Oh yes, pâte à choux.
Yeah.
I made that recently for the first time, and it's really fun, really challenging. I screwed it up the first time. Had to make it again.
Yeah,
But it's finicky.
I've done the same thing. The movie The Grand Budapest Hotel, if you've ever seen it, Wes Anderson, he makes weird movies, but one of the central characters of this film was this choux pastry. It was called a courtisan au chocolat.
Okay.
And,
I like it.
and they actually gave the recipe as part of the extended features, the extra features on the DVD.
Yeah.
And so I attempted it, and I didn't because a choux, of course, is it's flour and water and then egg, right? Is it? Yeah, and then
A little salt.
and a little salt. So you have to mix it in such a way.
I think some butter. Anyway,
There's butter. Yeah,
It's like a little bit of butter, but yeah.
So you mix all this stuff together, and you have to get it just right before it all just kind of breaks apart and turns gritty and not edible.
Well, you basically like cook the choux, like you cook the pastry in the pot. Like you make
as
it over
you're
the
making it.
stove, and then you boil down your liquids, or not boil them, like you heat your liquids, and then you add the flour, and then you mix it, and like you're keeping it moving so that nothing is burning. But as you're doing that, it's cooking the flour because flour is raw.
Sure.
And then you actually like bake it again. But baking it again like causes these, you cook it again by baking it, and it causes these like huge bubbles to like pop up. So that's why like choux.
So it makes like a puff pastry kind
Yeah.
of thing. And so in the puff pastry that I made, I also made a chocolate ganache, and then you inject it into your pastry.
and then inject it into the
And then
base
inject it
hole.
into your mouth. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. So so his winning entry was were choux buns, that and also like a trio of desserts. He said the choux buns were an homage to his Filipino heritage with his American upbringing. One was filled with mango ginger chantilly,
Yes.
which I like the idea of. I mean, mango is one of those flavors that I can be tricked into eating.
Yeah.
You know, because I remember having to eat mangoes whenever I was studying Spanish in Mexico. Like they just kind of slap a mango down there, and there's something about the texture I didn't like. But when it's flavored with something so like ginger, really, I thought that was really good. It says, and the other was filled with a malted milk chocolate pastry cream. That's
Yum.
Jeff. We may have to send some up to the satellite because.
You got my attention. I'm standing by, waiting. I'll put my catcher's mitt on. Okay?
That's right. There you go. Yeah, I'm sending it up in the pneumatic tube. So that's the chef that is Brother Andrew. But what about like how did he get into the Capuchin order? Right. So he was a native of Arcadia, California. He grew up in a nominally Catholic household. He says, my parents were immigrants from the Philippines, and we went to church because it was a cultural thing to do. And in addition to kind of the cultural Catholicism, he said that his passion for food began early in his childhood. He said he watched the Food Network as a child, but he never cooked. He worked for a little while in a talent agency, organizing events for celebrity chefs.
Interesting.
So he was, for his first year as a friar in West Philadelphia, a friar with an AR, right? So a friar would be a brother in the Franciscan order.
Right.
It occurred to him that he should try to cook something. So he went to the kitchen, and he hasn't stopped baking since then. Yeah. So he says
for
that
him.
and I don't know that it took me many years before I was confident to actually go into the kitchen and try something out.
Yeah, Olivia, like I know I've been watching some cooking shows myself, and there's a lot of things that I go, man, I would really like to cook that, but it's intimidating.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like somebody was asking me the other day about a roux, and they were like, I just can't get past the roux, and I was like, well, just do it.
Yeah.
And then I realized that I was talking about baking bread.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm intimidated by it, you know?
Well, yeah, bread is something that is like, that's generally the thing that people are like, I want to make it. I'm scared to death, and so I just don't do it. But bread is actually like super easy once you just try it. Like I got into bread because I just wanted to do it. And like the first dozen things that I made, and not like all in one, like sequentially, like I made a dozen different recipes and they all were terrible. But I was figuring it out as I was going.
Yeah.
And I was talking with a professor last summer, and we were talking about like philosophy, but we were also talking about like bread baking as an example of like rediscovering this virtue of amateurishness.
Yeah.
Really, just like
Being the new guy.
Yeah, being willing to like be an amateur and kind of like being willing to suck at something.
As they
And
say.
so, yes, you know, in France. But no, I think that really applies to bread baking. So like I tell people all the time, if you're scared of bread baking, I got a recipe for you. I'll give you my grandmother's recipe for rolls.
Yeah.
It's pretty foolproof and delicious.
I would
So
love them.
I
That's
will
what
send
Brother
you the
Andrew
recipe.
said. He said, if something doesn't work out, I ask myself why, wonder if I should have added this or use a different temperature. He says he just takes notes and keeps going on. And honestly, you know, with the caveat of, it's not a good idea to waste food, but if you're trying to learn how to cook it or to bake, then there's going to be some trial and error.
Yeah. But
And-
it's a science and an art.
Exactly, that's right. And especially with bread, bread is one of those things where you really can have fun kind of figuring out the science bit of the art and the art bit of the science. You know, I guess the hardest part is the rise and the rest. Whenever the yeast does its thing in secret, like our Lord talks about, you know, whenever the farmer plants, he doesn't know how the seed grows, but it grows and becomes something beautiful. It's kind of the same thing with letting yeast do its thing with the bread. Yeah, so
Interesting.
So Brother Andrew, in addition to kind of finding cooking, he kind of rediscovered his Catholic faith. He was less focused on his faith during his youth, he said, but he took his life took a dramatic turn while he was attending New York University in Manhattan, and then he returned to California, worked in the talent agency, and he met a friar that visited the others in formation. He fell in love with Catholicism and went on a friar's formation retreat, and it changed his life. You know, the first time that I ever thought about becoming a member of a religious order, I was a seminarian at the time, I thought about becoming a Capuchin friar because there's something about their way of life that was really captivating, and they also celebrated the liturgy with such prayer. It was the first time I think I'd seen, even as a seminarian, it was the first time I'd seen the liturgy prayed with such intensity. And so this is what happened to Brother Andrew. He was just Andrew, and he went to a friar kind of impacted him in some way. And he says, well, I think I'll go on a formation retreat, and it changed my life. He says, it was really bizarre. It was never part of my plan, but it all felt like second nature. I should have always been doing this, adding that his faith steps went from formation then to novitiate and now studying for the priesthood.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting how we have a conversation about baking and just try it?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing when you are discerning religious life. Just try it.
Yeah.
Just go and see what it's about. It's not, you're not married to the bread when you make it, right? You're not signed up for the religious order when you go for the first time to visit. Yeah. Just try it and see how it fits into your life.
That's right. And if the Lord is kind of cultivating yeast, if you will, leaven in your vocation, then it will begin to ferment it, right? It'll begin to grow. And I can resonate with Brother Andrew, because I remember not really knowing what a seminarian was, what a seminary was. I had never seen a member of a religious order, and it just so happens that the discernment retreat that I went on was at a Benedictine monastery. And so just seeing the men there in their black habit, which was immediately arresting for a high schooler, and then I felt like where I was, it was second nature. Yeah. I said, this is home for me. There's something that's just kind of lockstep. I also began to feel, it was the first time I think I had ever experienced Eucharistic adoration as well. It was a component of the retreat. I'd never seen it before. And so all of a sudden, this leaven began to kind of grow in my heart. And so, I said yes and never looked back, I guess I looked back a couple of times to say, Lord, are you sure? Yeah. But sure enough, so I can resonate with Brother Andrew. How cool, and he's studying for the priesthood as well. At present, on campus, he lives with 30 other men in the friary there. He says, not surprisingly, he ends up doing a lot of baking there, making birthday cakes and preparing little small wedding cakes for those who are in the area. That's kind of cool. He says, I have a lot of baking projects to work on, but I'm a full-time student. I pray, and I have a ministry, so I do things in batches. I may make a layer in the morning, prepare the frosting in the afternoon, bake the cake in the evening, freeze it, and then frost it the next day whenever I have free time. With his student life and his baking fame, he said his parents are astounded by it all. I guess so. Like, how many people think that you're going to enter into religious life and become somehow famous on the American Broadcasting Company?
Right, for baking.
Yeah.
Not even just for, for anything religious, for baking.
And he says that as the public accolades and the interviews taper off, he's planning to return to his normal life. So I'm going to go back to studying because I've been called to be a priest and to bake. Excellent. And that, I think, is one of the important things, too, about discernment. Oftentimes we think that we have to kind of give up our life, completely. Well, think about it. When you get married, you don't give up the things that you're naturally talented to do. Sure. You have to say no to some things, right? To chasing after other people that would be worthy spouses. Well, you don't do that anymore because you're married. But whenever you're given a set of gifts and talents and desires and passions, those can actually be fulfilled and amplified in the midst of the vocation that you choose. And it's certainly that way with the priesthood. There's so many things in my heart that I like to do, that I have talents in doing, and they are amplified by the fact that I am a priest. They're able to be used in a way that they wouldn't. For example, Jeff on the Jeff Star One just got an upgrade, a standard upgrade to his pod there. So now he has a system readout. So
yes, we're very proud of that.
Yeah, exactly. Now he can actually see what's going on the satellite.
Yeah, I don't have to use the iPhone anymore. I can just turn it on.
That's right.
In the words of Ross Perot, Look at this here chart.
Ross Perot, you're digging deep down into the Politico there.
Yeah, back in the 1900s, I know.
So what we'll do, if you're interested in maybe trying out one of Brother Andrew's recipes, he actually, in the article from the National Catholic Register, has one of his favorite go-to recipes. He says he uses it to top off any dessert or just pile it on top of fresh berries. And it's his cinnamon cloud whipped cream. Heavy cream, brown sugar, vanilla extract, cinnamon, and kosher salt. Just combine them together. All of the different, what do you call it whenever you're...
Ingredients?
Yeah. That's it.
There it is.
Yeah. And the measurements
You were.
are there.
Yep.
I notice he's pretty skinny, too. I just,
Oh, Brother Andrew is, he obviously does not eat all of the bread that he bakes. See, that's the problem I have, is if I bake the bread, like half of it goes to me. It's a small tax.
pass the butter and the red wine. I'm telling you, man, I'm happy.
That's
true.
Indeed. I went out to eat the other night at a plantation here in Louisiana, Nottoway Plantation, and they brought us bread and a butter whip and then 2 little brown butter whips, and I was like, what is it? So I'm like shoving my face full of bread and brown butter. It was sugarcane butter.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Oh my Lanta. Yeah. I was like, do you have this by the tub, please? It was really good.
It's probably a good thing they didn't, right?
Yes, because I'm looking at the cinnamon cloud whipped cream, and he's like, you could top this or top that, and I'm like, or I could top it in my mouth. That's just on the spoon.
I like to do this. I'll make a whipped cream and then put it on berries, and you're not going too far off the reservation, you know.
Right.
It makes me feel healthy.
Yeah, exactly. It's not terrible as things could be. And one of the beautiful things about being Catholic is that while we say no to things during Lent and stuff like that, we foods are clean. You know, you can eat and enjoy, but don't let the food become your God. You know. And so perhaps it would be a good time for us to pause for a moment just to remind you that we are the Catholic Underground. They were waiting for it. That's good. That's
Scared me for a minute.
I couldn't.
I know. I was like, oh, did I forget my line?
I forgot I had a line. Oh wow! I can't tell you what's happening this evening. My brain seems to be locking.
Reminded me of a time when I'm in class and I'm like, and Moses went to the and then like,
You're listening to the Catholic Underground. We don't know how, but
we're glad you're here.
Yeah, I'm Father Chris, joined by Kathleen, by Olivia, by Jeff. Might be a soft J. Anyway, it's just Jeff. And then Ed's in the ball pit there running the video as well. So our picks of the week are indeed coming up a little bit later. Kathleen, have you got your pick of the week yet?
Oh, yes, I do.
yeah, it's coming up. But let's see. So I think what we might do is talk a little bit about the Lenten season. Yes. Because we know that part of the component of Lent is that we give up things as a way to kind of discipline our bodies and discipline our heart so that we can make good decisions with our heart.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And you know, if you're listening or watching in real time, this is a week or so before Lent starts. But what I want to, I think that fasting is what we call an evergreen topic, right? That we don't often think about. Like
Not just Lent.
Yeah, we think about this idea of, okay, Lent's coming up, time to suffer and be miserable so that we can remember that Jesus is the Lord and resurrected to save, our souls. Okay, yes,
indeed.
But there are other ways and other reasons why we fast. And so you could be listening to this in, September, which is an odd month, right? But you can
But
fast.
we can fast in September.
Right. Absolutely. So fasting is an indispensable part of the spiritual life during the liturgical year, not just during Lent, but most especially during Lent, when it's emphasized as a universal prescription for all Catholics.
Yeah.
And so this is really interesting. When I was teaching high schoolers, I was like, guess what? You get to fast and give up stuff for Lent because it's what you're called to do as a Catholic. And so when we fast, we follow Jesus out into the desert, right? Jesus didn't say, hey, you got to give up all the fun stuff in your life because I didn't. So, you have to do it, right?
I like to think that Jesus had fun.
Yeah.
Of course he did.
It's for a reason. And if we know the reason why we're doing it, it doesn't make it maybe any easier, but it gives it more meaning, right? So when we fast,
and when you're doing something for someone,
right? Exactly, especially when we're doing it for someone else. So when we fast fight the devil and we temper the flesh. It's all about the desires of the flesh and saying no to those.
Yep.
And in order to do this, the church lays out universal fasting norms for everybody. Yep. So just a little refresher on Ash Wednesday and Good Friday, all Catholics over the age of 14 abstain from meat. And those over the age of 17 and under 60 fast.
Yep.
So we abstain from meat and then we fast. We eat very simply. That is, we limit ourselves to one full meal, as well as 2 smaller meals. And in the South, that's,
it's not easy to do.
It's actually really easy to do because our meals are huge all the time.
That's true.
So it's easier to understand what a smaller meal is, right? Together, those 2 meals are not equal to your full meal. Okay, so we're thinking small.
So again, fasting is, at least in the Catholic ethos, is not completely depriving yourself, but simply saying, I'm going to make this sacrifice to temper my flesh so that my soul can grow and so that my desires can be rightly ordered.
Right. Yeah. And let me tell you this too, because a lot of times we look at fasting as like, oh, I'm going to lose weight during Lent. It's going to be awesome. That's a good side effect, but it shouldn't be your goal. Okay. Yeah. That you're like, oh, now I'm going to get on my diet. But that this is a true fasting. And then of course,
like you have to temper a shoe pastry.
Right.
You have to do the same thing with your body. Yep.
Exactly. And then of course, every Friday is a day of abstinence from meat, which is rather difficult again down here in the South because we have seafood coming out of our ears. But along with that, all Catholics are encouraged to take up a personal habit of fasting. Yep. Okay, so along with prayer and almsgiving, these are ways that are tailored to our own attachments, our personalities, and our states of life. So if this is a great time to examine your life and see, down here in the South, we have Mardi Gras, and it's all about Fat Tuesday, right? This idea that we live these lavish lives full of things that maybe we don't need, that are good things, right, in of themselves, but we partake in way too much. Okay, so what are the reasons to fast? Let's note that while shaking off sinful habits, right, is in keeping with the repentant spirit of Lent. So this idea that we are repenting for our sins. Giving up something sinful is not the same as a fast. Okay, so
that's true.
Right, fasting is withholding something good for a time so that we can depend more fully on God. So giving up something like swearing, which is bad. Yeah. Right. For example, is a great idea, but it's not a fast.
That's right. We should always fast from sin.
It's just something that you should give up. Okay. And so the other cliche is usually giving up chocolate or soft drinks or these things that we're like. And while neither of these are bad ideas, there might be some more creative and productive fasts to consider.
I'll bet you have some.
I do. I do indeed. I have a friend. He's actually local, and we're friends. His name is Colin McIver, and he writes for Ascension Presents, excuse me. And he asked a lot of his friends and his family and colleagues, what are some of the most creative things that you've given up for Lent? Because there are those things like soft drinks and alcohol and chocolate that we can give up. But maybe God is calling you to be a little bit more creative. Maybe he's calling you this Lent to go a little bit deeper. And so he came up with 25 creative things to fast from.
That's a good number.
Yes, it's very good. We're not going to go over all of them. Yeah, we're not going to go over all of them, but these are some that I was like, I never thought of that. Okay, one of them is Target. Now this is like, I don't know, maybe you're like, I don't ever go to Target in the first place.
Like archery or the store?
Like Target, the store.
Yes, archery. Okay. Right. That's the first one.
He says that actually quite a few people mention this one. And he says he thinks it's because Target is a happy place for a lot of people, right? The aesthetic, the layout, the whole vibe is meant to invite you in, right? The little yellow clearance stickers on there. You're like, yes, I'll pay $45 in clearance because it's, but like, what is that one store that you go to because you love something that only they can produce, right? That you may not need to go to.
Interesting.
Right? Do you need what sticking maybe going a little bit further with this one, sticking maybe just to what's on your grocery list.
And the idea of kind of banishing yourself to a more penitential store, right?
Yes, a store that you might not enjoy, but will fulfill your needs. Maybe not your wants, but your needs. Okay, hot showers.
Oh, yeah.
That's a hard
This is
one.
a tough.
Yes. Okay. This is not for the faint of heart.
All of our Exodus 90.
Exactly. Folks. Right. Maybe you look forward to that in the morning or in the evening to unwind. But maybe this idea of physical discomfort, right, reminds you that what are you giving this up for? Yeah. This was really cool idea. Condiments. Yeah. Right. How many of us sit down to a meal and before we even take a bite, salt and pepper or ketchup for our chicken nuggets or barbecue sauce, right? Just eat what you got. Yeah. Right. And that idea that you're not going to die because you didn't have ketchup, right? But it makes you think, right? All of this is
right, and it's a simple thing too.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a simple thing to give up, but it's something that we don't even think about.
It's a small crucifixion,
right? So it takes effort. Car audio is a good one. Right.
I've done that before. Yeah. It's not easy. It's a lot.
one.
It's a lot harder than it seems.
Right.
Because then you have to fill up the time with something.
Right.
And so,
or you have to listen to your own thoughts.
Exactly.
Because in car audio, there's a lot on here about extra noise. Right? How many of us go home and turn the TV on just so that there's noise in our house? Yeah. Because maybe we don't want to be alone with God or hear what God has to say to us. Hello, am I talking to you? Because the Lord is.
I realize fully that we are a podcast, but maybe you're supposed to give these things up for lit. Yeah, that's okay.
A couple of things for you in the morning, right? Coffee. I'm not a coffee drinker, but for
I've
Colin,
done this before.
For Colin, his spiritual director once told him that it's supposed to be penitential for you and not for others. So, that idea that I can't be a human being until I've had my coffee, lies and deceit. Yeah. Okay? Your snooze button.
Yep.
Right? We're talking about that heroic moment when you don't hit the snooze button and you just get up out of bed and start your day. Right? I hit mine 50 times. This is kind of extreme.
And that's a mortification of the flesh, though,
right,
is getting up without the snooze.
Yeah. Comfy bedding or even your bed.
I've done that once.
Yeah. I've had friends who slept on the floor. Again, this reminder, physical reminder of what you're giving up. This one might be a little difficult for the ladies, right? Your reflection and makeup, right? How many of us spend so much time on our face and the way that we look, we're so concerned about that. Yeah. Right? And so what is it that you can creatively give up? Think beyond what you've always tried. Right? And if you give up something for Lent and you fail, guess what? Try again. It doesn't mean that your Lent is a failure.
That's right. We're the Catholic Underground. We'll be right back. Stay there. Hail, Holy Queen, Mother of Mercy, our life, our sweetness, and our hope. To thee do we cry, poor banished children of Eve. To thee do we send up our sighs, mourning and weeping in this valley of tears. Turn then, most gracious Advocate, thine eyes of mercy towards us, and after this our exile, show unto us the blessed fruit of us, O clement, O loving, O sweet Virgin Mary. Welcome back. You found the Catholic Underground with me, Father Chris Decker. We've also got Kathleen Lee. We've got Olivia Galino. Also Jeff Blackwell in space. And Ed. Ed is in some sort of formless void where he directs the video. Yeah.
Very a la Good Place.
Yeah. Oh, perhaps. Yeah. I haven't seen the final season. I don't know what it's like, but our picks of the week are coming up in just a minute. But we thought we'd spend some time talking about why things are just messed up. Have you? Yeah. I've actually had young people ask me this question. How can you believe in God when the world is just screwed up? Yeah. I mean, how is that possible? Why would God do that? Why would he allow that?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about misery for a little while. No, not really.
Just in time for Lent, right? Yeah.
Right. No, it's a good question. And it's a question that I've heard too. And honestly, I like to encourage that question. Like, especially when people are thinking about like the ways of the world and how things could be better. Like, yes, think on those things, right? And think about God's role in those things. But we shouldn't just kind of like assume certain things about God, or we should be willing to challenge our assumptions that are kind of implicit in the questions that we're asking, especially when they have to do with God or like reality or ourselves, things like that. And then try to like figure out, am I am I coming into contact with what is real and then asking a question about that? Or am I thinking about something in a way that's somehow messed up, right? And then making conclusions based on that, right? Because that can be a problem too, even though we're asking a good question. So, Dr. Randall B. Smith over at Catholic World Report was thinking about this question, and I think that he went through it really logically, right? So if you have this question, right, how can you believe in God when the world is so screwed up, right? It's a good question. You've probably heard it in some form or another from someone, young
and it's
or
important
old.
to ask the question. I mean, dare we say it's okay to ask that question yourself, and then to do exactly what the good doctor has, and kind of reason your way through it and find good sources to help you work through it, like we're going to hopefully do for you.
Exactly. Here we go. So like we said, it's a common question, but what I also want to kind of bring to the forefront is that there are certain premises behind that question that we should maybe bring into the light and assess those, right? So a premise is something that we use as a foundation in order to draw conclusions or to make an argument from which we then draw conclusions, right? So it comes down to like basic logic, right? So like if you're going to make a decision about something that's happening in your life, you need to have all the facts first, right? So let's say that you're like about to buy a house or something. You need all the facts in front of you, right? How much the house costs, what your real estate agent is willing to do for you, what repairs are needed, all that kind of stuff. But if you don't have all the right information, let's say that the estimate they gave you for repairs is $4,000 off, right? Well, then you don't actually have all the information you need to make a good decision, right? So if something is flawed, you have to go and address that before you can make a conclusion, right? And so it's the same with logic, right? If your premises, those things that you're starting with, kind of your principles, if those aren't all correct, well, then the conclusion that you're going to draw is going to be flawed in some way, right? It could be a really big flaw, it could be really small, but either way, it's not going to be what you're hoping for when you're asking these deep questions, right? So behind this particular question, what's lurking is this presumption that God is somehow responsible for the problems in the world, right?
That's why we immediately just go to God and say that it must be his fault. If he's the one who created everything and things aren't good, then he must be responsible.
Exactly. Right. So that's the first thing. But then the second thing is the presumption that God is not the source of the problems in the world, and but somehow he's the only one who's able to save us from them. Right. So there's kind of like a challenge or a duel in premises here. And so obviously contradiction is not going to like lead us to truth. So we have to figure out what's real. Right.
Yep.
And so one of the logical problems that lies behind that first kind of question about, is God responsible for the problems in the world, is how we arrive at the conclusion that the world is somehow screwed up, right? I think we can look around and obviously assess some problems, right? Things are not ideal. But the presumption seems to be that the world shouldn't be screwed up, right? That's another presumption that the questioner, someone who's asking this question, is making, right? That I'm looking around at the world and it's screwed up, and that's somehow a state of what it's not supposed to be, right? It could be better.
Right. Typically, I experience suffering, right? Or I see suffering occurring, and it seems to me like that shouldn't be happening.
Exactly. Right. And but the challenge that Dr. Smith gives is, why do we presume that though? Right? Maybe you've said something to your parents about like, they give you some punishment or some, expectation.
Consequence for your actions. Yeah.
And you say, well, that's not fair. Right. And likely one of your parents or both might say, well, who said life would be fair?
Right.
Right. Why would anyone expect fairness, right, in a world that's somehow the accidental byproduct of a random cosmic explosion billions of years ago, right?
So we have this desire there's something inside us that calls out for justice, right, for that which is fair. And so I guess he's making the point that if all this were random, then there wouldn't be this call for justice in us, right?
Exactly. Well, because the question that someone's asking is, how can you believe in God when the world is so screwed up? It's a question that's coming from likely someone who doesn't believe in God, right? And so if that's one of their premises, right? I don't believe in God. Well, if you have that expectation that you're trying to build a world or build a belief system, build a life on, something that does not come from any transcendent supreme being, well, then you're kind of like, backed into this corner of something happening by chance or by accident, right? And if something's happening by chance or by accident, then there aren't like rules of the game.
Nothing is fair.
Yeah,
right.
There aren't rules of the game, right? If you want to think about life like that, right, there are certain rules and expectations, right? I'm not going to put my purse down on the ground at Target and expect it to still be there when I come back in 10 minutes, right? And I would recognize, though, that like, well, someone took it, right? Someone took something from me. I have been offended in some way, right? Just like I, have the hope that I can, go to a big box store in the middle of the night and not be hurt or, accosted in some way, right? But the world's not always fair. But we do aim for justice, right? Like Father Chris was saying, that's one of the rules of the game.
So there's a standard that something must be fair.
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
Exactly. And so to say that the universe is screwed up or bad means that there's some kind of standard or good, right?
Yeah.
Or of not
Some
screwed up.
measure.
Yeah, right. Once upon a time, there was this good, even if it maybe has never happened, there's this standard of good that we should be aiming for or once had. And so maybe someone would claim that standard of good, it was created by, an individual human mind with this kind of view towards self-protection, right? Like, I don't want someone to accost me. I don't want someone to steal my purse, right? So I have created this kind of facade of fairness around me so that people don't do that. But that's not really how morality works, right? Morality is not an invention for self-protection, right? Most moral codes, most systems of ethics are self-critical, right? They condemn us for merely doing things for our own benefit, right? Because we don't live alone in this world. We live very much in community. We live very much with other people, and our lives touch other people's lives.
Which is why all Kathleen wants is a king cake every now and then.
That's true.
She was talking about how life wasn't fair today.
Story of my life.
All right. Well, okay. I'm just going to sidestep that entirely and move on. I love you very dearly. I will make one in due time. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Father.
Yeah, well, you're welcome.
As you nom on your M&Ms. Yeah. So somehow, though, we all have this idea that there's this objective standard of good and evil, or things that are true and false, or of justice and injustice, right? And Dr. Smith says that we might be mistaken in believing this, but it is an odd illusion, right? So let's say that you look at a math problem and say, well, the answer is wrong. We can only do that if we have some notion of what the correct answer is, right? So I can look at 2 + 2 = 5 and say, well, that's not right, right? Just like I can look at the capital of Louisiana is Alexandria and say, no, that's incorrect.
Which, by the way, that's incorrect.
It isn't incorrect. Okay. If you remember your state capitals, it is Baton Rouge.
Oh, yeah, indeed. Got it.
Right.
I give myself an M&M for that one. I knew the right answer.
That's right. Congrats. All right. I would hope that we'd all get that right. So we can't complain. What we're trying to say is we can't complain that the world isn't good. Or if you can complain that the world isn't good, then you have to have some objective standard of good that the world then fails to meet, right? So, but that's good, right? It's good that we're realizing that, okay, well, if we're seeing the lack of good, well, then that gives us a sense of the reality of the good, right?
And that it must be there.
Yeah. But I love what he says. He says that if you don't accept the existence of some absolute standard of goodness underlying everything that exists, all that is, then you can't complain that things aren't good, right? I love that because it's logically conclusive, right? If you don't have that absolute standard of goodness, then things aren't good. They just are, right?
Yeah.
There's no, like we said, there's no rules of the game. So things just are. They just exist, right? In whatever state they happen to be, but we can't actually judge those things, right? I can't say whether something is good or bad because I don't have a standard of measurement, right? Just like if I don't know what inches are, I can't expect to like measure my height and tell someone my height, right? I have to be able to have a standard in order by which to judge things.
Right.
And if I don't have that, well, then I can't say anything about it, right? And so the best you would be able to say under that kind of scheme is, well, I just don't like the way things are, but you wouldn't be able to articulate why. Right. You wouldn't be able to say, well, it's not fair or it's unjust or something like that. And so, maybe we can say that about certain things, right? I don't like the way things are.
Which we should say that.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's a good judgment on the world. It's not conclusive. It's not like, it doesn't tell you much, but you can say that, right? But what you can't really do is use that as an argument against God, right? Because your argument against God presumes that there is something like God, right? If I'm going to say, how can you believe in God if when the world is so screwed up? Well, then I'm kind of backing myself, and hopefully we're showing this, that I'm kind of backing myself into this like kind of belief in a God, right? Because I believe in things like goodness and truth and justice. And those don't just come from nowhere, right?
They are an absolute.
They are an absolute, and any absolute has its origins in the transcendent, right?
Has an author.
Yes, right? The author of those things, who is those things, right? So the argument against God being made here actually presumes that there is a something like God, right? Some kind of ultimate goodness that underlies the whole universe. Otherwise, you can't use those categories, right? But then, so the question becomes, well, why is there evil in the world? And that is a question as old as time.
That's right.
Right? The problem of evil.
It's a deep question that comes up over and over and over again.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good question. I love whenever people say, I'm having a problem. I just don't understand. Why is there evil in the world? That's a great question, right? And we should ask ourselves that question. And someone like St. Augustine was very equipped and very familiar with this question.
He's been thinking about it a lot.
Exactly, for the past 1,700 years. And he says, what if evil is not a thing, like a table or a cup, right? But what if evil is a lack of a good that should be there? Right? And this is what the church pretty, as a standard believes. Thomas Aquinas takes up this idea as well, that evil is some kind of privation. Privation just means like a lack or a deficit. Right? So basically we had a situation where everything was good, and then sin entered the world and it kind of emptied all the goodness out. Right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes. So evil is just the name that we gave to the good, right? So evil is not a thing. Evil is no thing, right? It doesn't exist. You can't like put your hands on evil. Right? But we can say that, we can say that a table is bad if it doesn't, if it has like a leg that's rickety or too shorter than the other legs. Or we can say that a cup is bad if it leaks water. And we say that a choice is bad when it doesn't achieve the good, right? When there's a lack in, height on one of the legs of the table, it's not really as much of a table as it could be, right? Or when there's a hole in the cup, is it really much of a cup, right? But we're using those standards to judge the goodness of the cup, right? But if there's a lack of good in something, well, then that's when we call it evil, right? And so Dr. Smith says that, kind of taking all this in mind, when we look at that question, why is the world so screwed up? The answer is because it's finite, right? This world that you and I live in is tangible, is sensible, it's visible. I can touch it, I can see it, I can experience it. There are definitely things that are on the earth that I cannot see or touch, like emotions and fears and love, right? But the world itself, this world is passing, right? So Christians believe that God has put in our souls an infinite desire for an infinite good, right? And all the finite goods then are going to fall short in various ways, but they have a very important job because they point us toward that ultimate good, right? Just like the things that we give up during Lent aren't, like Kathleen was saying, they aren't evil, right? Like your TV is not evil. Your bed is not evil, right? Your snooze button, not even that's evil. But it's a good, right? And so we give up those goods in order to kind of recalibrate, right? And so that's what their job is to point us for that ultimate good. And so then if we fail to understand our limitations and the limitations of material existence, of created reality, then we might perceive those limitations as the world being screwed up, right? If I have this expectation that the world is supposed to be amazing and is supposed to fill all of my desires and I'm supposed to be completely satiated and happy, and then the world fails to meet that expectation, well then, the question I'm going to ask is, why is the world so screwed up, right? But if I'm aware that this world is finite and that I am created to be in this world for a time and then to live forever in the world to come, right, in the eternal life with God, well, then I'm not trying to exhaust this world of everything that it has to give me, right? And still come up short, right? And actually, like, it makes me think of The Good Place too. So if you saw the final episode,
I did not, haven't seen it.
We can talk about it later.
Okay. Keep going.
But that's the kind of the mistake that they make, right? I'll say that. It's the kind of mistake that they make, is thinking that, like, that we can be completely satiated, and you kind of always end up in a place of despair if you think that the world is going to satiate all of your goods, right?
Which it can't.
Or that individual
finite.
experiences, right, of particular people are going to fill all of your needs, right? And so maybe that we can say that the major reason that the world is screwed up, right, has a lot to do with the improper use that people make of their freedom, right? The choices that we make, we're given free will in order to choose the good, right? We're not given free will as a license to do whatever you want, right? Yeah. That's a world that has no rules, right?
Yes.
If you have no rules of the game, then freedom is license to do whatever you want, right? It's the purge world. But our freedom, true freedom, is to choose the good, right? Everything comes down to this good. And so when we don't choose the good, what we do is we deny the good, and then we empty a situation of its love and of its goodness, and that is sin, right?
Until it's privated, right? Until there's a lack.
Yeah, it's deprived, right, of its good. And so in order for there to be love, in order for there to be good, in order for there to be justice, there has to be freedom, right? I can't force someone to be just like I can't force someone to love me, right? But if people can say yes to love freely, then they have to be able to use that freedom to say no, right? And the results of that no can be tragic, right? This is the kind of tentacles of sin that everyone has felt in some way, in your family, in your friendships, in almost every aspect of life. We've felt those tentacles of sin and their effects, right? When someone has said no to love or goodness or truth. And so when it comes down to it, we look at that question, right? Is the world screwed up, or is rather my life that is screwed up, right? My lives, the lives of many great people, right? And so when we look at why do so many people make bad choices when they could make good choices, well, that's what it comes down to, right? Because they can.
Because we can.
Right? Yeah. But it all comes down to this, right? It all comes down to the fact that God has given you a free will, right? Benedict XVI says that that God knew the risk in giving us free will, but he was willing to risk what's at stake is sin, right? He was willing to risk sin because the value at stake was so grand and so beautiful to him. And the value is you being together with God in communion.
That's right.
Right? The communion that was at risk, right? You can't have communion without freedom, just like you can't have a relationship that's forced. Right. Right? And so God gave us freedom so that we could choose him, even though the risk was that we wouldn't choose him. Yeah. But he said that Benedict says that risk was so worth it to God, right? And that he does everything, right? That's what redemption is about. That's why Christ comes in the incarnation. That's why he dies on the cross, right? That's what salvation history is all about. It's all about that communion with us.
And that's consequently why he gives us a religion, so that we can reestablish that communion with him. Yeah. It is enough that Christ dies on the cross, and it is enough that he establishes a code of goodness, if you will, that's based in him. But he also wants that redemptive act is something that is able to be renewed in us, and of course that we were able to be given like supernatural gifts so that we can access the one who is good. Yeah. And that's really what communion is. It's more than just a sharing. It's a completion of that which we were made for.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a reforming us. It's an unscrewing up. It's a kind of screwing in properly.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that can begin even here and now, right? So like, we look around and the world is not great sometimes, right? And maybe our individual world is even worse, or it's been better and now it's worse, right? But there's always hope, because God is not the puppet master of the world being screwed up, right? God gives us everything that we need so that we can choose the good, right? If we look around and the world is screwed up, well, you can make it better, right? It's not that we can heal the problems of the entire world, But we can invite God into this situation, especially in places where people have abandoned him or have emptied a situation of its love or of its goodness, right? But we can invite God into our lives first and foremost, and then we invite God into our world, right? The people that we touch, the jobs that we have, our hobbies, all of the hemispheres of our life. Yep. If God permeates those, well, then that changes this world, right? The world of Olivia, and then it changes in some way the worlds that of all the people that I touch, right? That maybe I don't even know about. And so that's why, Mother Teresa says things like, do small things with great love, right? Or if you want to change the world, go home and love your family.
That's right.
Right? These are simple things, but the point is that we're not left with despair, right? The world may be in trouble, but it's okay, right? Because we're not alone in that trouble.
And we do find presence together with God. We can do that. And that's why we're not called to just kind of be all lone wolf. We're not supposed to be set out adrift by ourselves. That's not what God wants for us. Yeah. And so if everything is all messed up, then we can recognize that together, and then we can bring that to the Lord as a child would say, it's all messed up. And then he is the one who helps us to refashion it in his image and not a distorted image, So we hope that helps a little bit. We'll put a link to the article so that you can read it and maybe kind of get some stuff happening in your head as well. And of course, it's a good thing to meditate on during Lent. If everything's messed up, then why does God exist? How does God exist? Well, these are good questions to ask. And when you have 40 days to plumb the heart of God, he will respond. He certainly does. All right, there is something that we should plumb right now. And that's the part of the show that we like to call
the CU Pick of the Week.
All righty, for our CU Pick of the Week. Kathleen, you ready for your Pick of the Week? Okay, why don't you tell us your Pick of the Week?
All right, being a teacher, 1, I'm poor. 2, I'm tired. Yep. So I don't always have the brain energy to create lesson plans. And so there's this website called Teachers Pay Teachers. And, being a teacher, we collaborate with those that are on our campus, but this is a really cool way for teachers to collaborate with teachers across, I would imagine, the world, and to share their resources and also get a little money for it. So if I, for example, I'm teaching about Martin Luther, and I found a really cool activity for $1. She was charging $1 for it. About writing your own 95 thesis. And I didn't even.
Kathleen does not teach at a Lutheran school.
No, I don't. Okay, right. But it was interesting to talk about. We're talking about injustice and things,
Oh yeah, okay.
And so really cool website. You have to kind of look, if you're a religion teacher, you got to kind of dive in there. But you can search for things. It's in there. You just have to go under subjects specialty. But you can search by grade. You can search by subject. Some of them are free, some of them are a couple bucks, and some of them you can get like a whole year's worth of something for a more substantial amount. But it's a pretty cool website.
Very nice. All right, Olivia, your Pick of the Week.
Yeah, my Pick of the Week is, since we were talking about baking at the top of the show, and like recognizing that that's something that freaks people out. My Pick of the Week is a cookbook called Bread Baking for Beginners, The Essential Guide to Baking Kneaded Breads, No-Knead Breads, and Enriched Breads. Ooh. So I haven't actually used this book, but I have seen someone do like a cookbook type of thing on Instagram with it. And I really like it because, number one, it explains like the science behind bread, because I think that's a lot of why people have trouble with it, because they're like, well, it was all flat and I don't know why, right? So it explains the science behind bread. But also like techniques, stepping scones is what they call it. So like, so like progress from starting out just like the absolute easiest bread you can make all the way into like some harder things like making your own like poolish or like some kinds of bread starters. And using those to bake bread. So I've seen some really cool things coming out of this cookbook. So that's my Pick of the Week, especially if you've ever said, I want to make bread, but it seems really hard. Well,
there you go.
$11.99 on Bookseller.
And it's available for free on Kindle Unlimited if you subscribe to that. Yeah.
Wow.
Jeff, your Pick of the Week up there in space.
Well, I really like that bread thing, though. I'm just, I don't know. I'm like you. I'm addicted to it. Loves me
aren't we
too.
all?
Yeah.
Good carbs is good.
So let's talk good health here a little bit. Oil of oregano.
Okay, I presume it's oregano oil.
I presume it is too.
Yeah.
Because it comes in liquid form, which you can place under your tongue like 2 or 3 drops. And there are so many good benefits, and I'll have this in the show notes. But I like it in capsule form, and I take one in the morning, one in the evening, and it's a natural antibiotic, antioxidant. It can lower cholesterol, help you lose weight, anti-inflammatory, and it's good for the gut.
Oh.
So it really has. It's one of the things my doctor had recommended to me because the older I get, I'm having these issues with allergies, and I'm just in that part of the world where they just never let up. So in fact, it's February, and it feels like springtime here with flowers blooming and everything. And
Again,
right, for about the 3rd time since January. But anyway.
Cool.
So there it is, oil of oregano. And what's nice about it, you pop one and you wait a couple of minutes, I'd say 20 minutes or so, and you start to taste oregano.
Oh. you know, my preferred method of oregano is pizza.
There you go.
That's how I like to receive oregano. My pick of the week, thanks, Jeff, by the way. My pick of the week is No Greater Love, Dr. Edward Sri's Biblical Walk Through Christ's Passion. It's a book. It's also a video series from Ascension. And there's a study book as well that you can purchase if you want to have a study group on the book. And it goes through, of course, through the Passion itself, but it takes some of the questions. What was Jesus going through at each moment? How did the Old Testament foretell Christ's death, which is really fascinating that all this stuff is foretold and fulfilled in Christ. Why did Christ die? What did it accomplish? So some of the stuff we talked about in the last segment is certainly taken up with the notion of getting to know who Jesus is. What was the symbolism behind Jesus' sweat becoming like drops of blood? What was the symbolism of the veil being torn in the temple? What are all these other mysterious events that are happening that are kind of buried in the scriptures there? And sometimes we gloss over. And then what do the last words of Jesus mean? So if you're interested in that, No Greater Love, really fantastic book thus far. I haven't finished it, but I better finish it soon because Lent's coming and I'm going to be leading a Bible study in my parishes with it. So, so that's my pick of the week, and I hope it's something that is helpful for you as we prepare to dive into the Lenten season. Jeff, we are always grateful for our viewers, for our listeners, and for our benefactors, especially those who pray for us, aren't we, Jeff?
Absolutely, with our hands over our heart. Thank you. This week, the Catholic Underground is possible because of people just like you. Join the growing number of undergrounders at CatholicUnderground.com/donate. Also, an important way to support us is to like us, heart us, star us, and share us on your social media platform of choice, and leave a review. Yeah, be sure to click the stars.
That's right. Please do that because then that helps other people to know what you like about our program. You know, that's a good thing. Our panelists this week, we got Kathleen Lee. She's the benefactress. Thank you, Kathleen.
Anytime.
You're at KLee626 on Instagram.
That's it.
All right. Also, Olivia Galino, she's at the.real.omg on Instagram. So if you want to see some of the things that she bakes, that's the place to do it. Thanks, Olivia. Also, our technical director is Jeff Blackwell. He's up on the satellite. He's at Jeff Blackwellis on Instagram and Twitter. Thank you, Jeff.
Always a privilege, Father.
Our video and graphics director is Ed Ball, and our research assistant and the leader of the crew in the lab is Jim Hayes out in California. And you know me, I'm Father Chris. You can follow me on Instagram at Digital Catholic. Follow me on Twitter at Digital Catholic. And a couple of other places too. We hope that we've helped you cut through the noise and find that still small voice with the Catholic Underground for Faith Gone Digital, and we will see you next time.
From the Catholic Underground.